Evening, everyone. We do begin the readout tonight with the cowardice of Senate Republicans. As we speak, they're planning to block the creation of a bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th attack on our Capitol and our democracy. And that vote could take place at any moment. For the first time in this legislative session, Republicans are set to deploy the legislative filibuster, the Jim Crow-era rule that allows the minority party to obstruct the will of the majority, requiring 60 votes rather than 51. It's the clearest signal yet that Republicans have no interest in getting to the bottom of the siege that nearly decapitated our government, even as the number of people charged in that attack now approaches 500. As President Biden suggested earlier today, the Republican opposition has no credible explanation.
I can't imagine anyone voting against the establishment of a commission on the greatest assault since the Civil War on the Capitol.
I should note that Republicans are willing to block this commission despite the sacrifices of the 3 officers who died after defending them that day. Brian Sicknick, who lay in state with honor in that very Capitol, as well as 2 others who took their own lives after the MAGA insurrection. In fact, Republicans heard today from Sicknick's mom and his longtime partner, among others who personally lobbied them to vote yes.
Does it anger you, Mrs. Sicknick, to hear senators who do not support this commission, and what emotions do you feel when you're confronted with that?
This is why I'm here today. Usually I'm stay in the background, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore.
I think it's very disturbing that anyone would not want to support this. I mean, why would they not want to get to the bottom of such horrific violence? Doesn't matter that Brian's cause of death was natural. He still died defending them that day. And Officer Liebengood and Officer Smith, they died as a result of the trauma that day.
Republicans won't just be ignoring the trauma of those officers. Their vote against the commission will also be an affront to the staffers, including in their own offices, who lived through the violence of that day. As Roll Call reports, some congressional employees are shaken by what they see as whitewashing of the attack by Republican lawmakers. One even said that when I see those members in the hallway or in the basement, I think to myself that they wouldn't care if I was dead. This comes as a new Quinnipiac poll today found that a majority of Americans, 55%, say that the events on January 6th were an attack on democracy that should never be forgotten. That seems to be a pretty obvious reason to support a commission. However, 39% say it's time to move on, and that clearly is what Republicans like Mitch McConnell want to do. McConnell admitted that he doesn't want to be talking about the insurrection by the time the midterms roll around next year. And here's what he said about those who support the commission on Tuesday.
They would like to continue to debate things that occurred in the past. They'd like to continue to litigate the former president into the future. We think the American people going forward and in the fall of 22 ought to focus on what this administration is doing to the country.
According to Politico, McConnell was even more blunt in a closed-door meeting where he warned Republicans that approving the commission could hurt the party's midterm election message. In other words, Mitch McConnell knows the results of a bipartisan commission would make Trump and the Republicans like himself look bad. And given that 35 Republicans in the House passed the bill over the objections of Kevin and other members of the GOP leadership last week, Mitch is desperate to keep his caucus in line. In fact, CNN reported that McConnell has even made the unusual move of asking wavering senators to support filibustering the bill as a personal favor to him. Perhaps most disingenuous, however, was McConnell's laughable assertion that he doesn't want to focus on, quote, things that occurred in the past. He actually said that with a straight face, even as the MAGA base of his party and in his state parties obsess over trying to overturn the long-ago completed presidential election in Arizona and other states. And that brings us to the real reason many rank-and-file Republicans don't want to probe into the insurrection. It's because they're too busy defending and profiting off the big lie that inspired it. Here's Senator Ron Johnson just this morning.
Is Biden, did he legitimately win the election?
Well, he certainly is President of the United States.
So you don't think that Biden legitimately won the election?
I'm saying he's the legitimate President of the United States. Yeah, he's the President of the United States.
But see, that's the fundamental problem.
I don't know what all happened. I don't know the effect in these full states. I don't know.
Would a commission help?
Not this commission, no.
With me now is Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. And Senator Van Hollen, we get the Republican, playbook here. They want to move on to attacking the Biden administration and pretending the Biden administration are a bunch of communists. They want that messaging. They don't want to talk about this. But we're going to keep talking about this because this was an attack on our country. So I get where they're coming from. What I don't really get, to be honest with you, is where one of your fellow Democrats is coming from, Joe Manchin. I want to read this to you. This is Joe Manchin criticizing Republicans for opposing the commission. This was just this morning. He said there's no excuse for any Republican to vote against this commission since Democrats have agreed to everything they asked for. Mitch McConnell has made this his political position, thinking it will help his 22 elections. They don't believe the truth will set you free, so they continue to live in fear. That sounded pretty good. And then he said this later today.
Would you be willing to break the filibuster in order to get this passed? The plan is
I'm not ready to
pleading.
destroy our government. I'm not ready to destroy our government. No, I think the nation will come together. You have to have faith. There's 10 good people.
Senator, that seems laughable to me. What the attempt to destroy our government happened on January 6th. Have you had a conversation with Joe Manchin, and what is his deal?
Well, Joy, I have about the filibuster, but first, when Joe Manchin said that Mitch McConnell and Republicans were essentially engaging in a dereliction of duty for refusing to support this January 6th commission, he's right. And we should remember that, because later this evening, it will, if things don't change, mean that all of those appeals that Brian Sicknick's mother made to Republican senators today, and by the way, also appeals made by some current Capitol Hill officers today directly to those senators, will have fallen on deaf ears. So Joe Manchin's absolutely right about that. He and I disagree when it comes to the issue of the filibuster, because I believe the filibuster needs to be gotten rid of. I do think right now it is standing in the way of protecting our democracy, especially the importance of passing H.R. 1 and S1. And we are going to have that continuing conversation in the Democratic caucus, and I hope we will build momentum to ensure that we stop those state legislatures who are trying to put up these roadblocks to our democracy. But I will say for this evening, he and I are on the same page on this issue.
Well, not really, though, because, I mean, the thing is, I guess what worries a lot of rank-and-file Democrats and even non-Democrats, there are a lot of, sort of old-school versions of Republicans who are worried, too, that our democracy is on a razor's edge. And rather than focus on saving our democracy from what these extremists that now form the base of the Republican Party are doing, and what people like Ron Johnson are trying to do to our democracy, they're setting up to potentially steal future elections. People like Joe Manchin are casually talking about preserving the artifacts of the Senate from the Jim Crow era. He seems more fixated on holding on to Jim Crow era rules in the Senate than in saving our democracy. Is there enough urgency in your caucus to save our democracy from what Republicans are trying to do to it?
Joy, I think there is. We just had a Senate Democratic caucus discussion this week devoted to exactly this issue. The first thing to do is to get all 50 Democratic senators on board S1, the For the People Act, in order to establish those nationwide minimum standards to protect the right to vote. That's step number one. Step number two is to make sure that we have all 50 Democratic senators recognizing that saving our democracy is more important than a Senate rule that, frankly, is blocking democracy, and in fact, in itself, is an anti-democratic provision of the Senate rules. And so this is a process. I agree with you about the urgency of the process, because those state legislatures, they're going forward. And I also completely agree that what Republicans are doing tonight in blocking this bipartisan commission is clear evidence of their dereliction of duty and the fact that they will go to all lengths to prevent the truth from coming out. This is a cynical ploy by Mitch McConnell, as you said, to take attention away from what Donald Trump, Republicans, and others have done. And they're violating their oath to the Constitution. They're violating their obligations to Brian Sicknick's mother and to all the other officers and they're betraying the country. So this should be a moment when all Americans, including all senators, recognize the depths to which Mitch McConnell and Republicans will go for political purposes. And we do need to summon the will to take that on.
Absolutely. I will not argue with a word of that. Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you very much. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Thank you. And joining me now is Jason Johnson. Cheers. Jason Johnson, contributor for the GRIO and professor at Morgan State University, and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio. And Jason, my friend, you know, Senator Chris Van Hollen is obviously very sincere in what he was saying, and that, you know, they have to get, you know, Democrats and all the 50 Democrats on board to make sure that we defend our democracy. Here's my challenge. If you can't get, Susan Collins put out her little amendment, if you cannot get Republicans, 10 Republicans even, to agree that you should investigate the attempt to hang Mike Pence, decapitate our government, and threaten even their own staffers to the point where their own staffers are saying, I'm not sure these people care if I live or die, if they won't be on the side of Capitol Police, there is no bipartisanship. Isn't this a dead argument?
It's a dead argument, and I want people to understand also, Joy, the context here for Joe Manchin and what this really may be about, because he said, you know, he can't take the heat and he doesn't want to destroy the government. Joe Manchin's not getting reelected. Okay, he's not. The guy got elected by 49% of the vote in 2018. He's not going to keep his job. He's going to get knocked out next time. So what we're dealing with here is someone who was primarily concerned with their own legacy and their own reputation because the electoral consequences are moot. He's not going to get reelected. That the first thing the Democrats might need to do is convince him, hey, dude, just do this for legacy's sake because you're not going to win back in West Virginia. But I will say this, Joy, and this is an actual change. I believed all along that Joe Manchin is roughly like the Susan Collins of the Democratic Party, that eventually he will change his mind. And I still think he might do that when it comes to HB 1, when it comes to the Senate Bill 1, when it comes to the For the People Act. But the idea that he will still spout this nonsense in the face of an attempt to murder him and everybody with a D in their name is disturbing to me. And I don't see the value, honestly, at this point in Democrats treating him with kid gloves. Personally, if I were a Senator Van Hollen or any other senator, I would say, look, if you aren't in favor of this commission, then you want me dead as much as some of these Republicans do. That's how I'd be talking about it at this point. Because I don't understand the recalcitrance on the part of one or two senators against simply getting rid of the filibuster in this particular instance to do something, because I promise you, and this is not because we want this to happen, you can ask anybody, you can ask Malcolm Nance, you can ask any security expert, it's going to happen again. Yeah. The people who did this will simply try again, and this commission is the only way to possibly prevent it.
Well, they'll try again, Susan, and next time they might succeed because they're setting up in the states to make it so that they can just outright steal elections and only Republicans decide who wins. Senator Mitt Romney made a suggestion that I think should be obvious. You're a political strategist, my friend. Senator Mitt Romney suggested opposing the commission is bad politics. You think, Willard? I think the perception is on the part of the public that the January 6th commission is just trying to get to the truth of what happened, and the Republicans will be seen as not wanting to let the truth come out. Yeah, no S, Sherlock. I don't understand how Mitch McConnell and friends think that they're going to just get the silence of what? Every Capitol Police officer, every staffer. They're going to need a lot of people to not talk about January 6th in order for his strategy to work and to move on to saying Biden's a commie, which no one's going to believe. Why do you suppose that Mitch has decided that he thinks he can survive the ads that, in theory, even Democrats can figure out they should run?
It all comes back to the source. It comes back to Donald Trump. I think there was only so much he was going to go against him, and now he is falling in line with everyone else. And just to follow up on what Jason said, you know, Joe Manchin, if you can't get bipartisanship on protecting our democracy, you're not getting it for anything. And you should use this as the reason, and it will make sense to everybody why we must get rid of the filibuster, because there's literally no chance of anything else happening. There's also something that I'm sorry.
No, you go.
No, there's also one other thing that's been on my mind lately is Mitch McConnell is out there and he is moving his conference. He is speaking as if he was still majority leader. I am wondering, where is Chuck Schumer's voice? Where is the the insistence, the urgency. I mean, I can ask you guys. I just don't understand, for a man who wanted that position for so long, why he is laying low. And I do not believe it's just because the administration says, oh, let this play out. There is a reason. I'm not sure what it is, but he's got to get on board and he's got to start using his voice. He's the majority leader of the United States Senate, and we have heard boo.
Well, and Jason, there is a sense that Manchin is also out of control and thinks he's the majority leader. Manchin is exercising control as if he's in charge of the Senate. Doesn't that have to stop?
Yeah. This flex that he's going on here, it's not impressive. It's not making anybody happy. It's not him. It's not his drip, whatever. And quite frankly, just on some ego level stuff, if I were Chuck Schumer, I would be angry about the fact that more people are asking Joe Manchin what he thinks of what I think. I'm supposed to be the majority leader. Why don't you act like you're the boss? Pays the cost. But here's, again, I think the larger issue here. The Democrats have this conflict between what they think is supposed to be the way that government works and what the people actually want. The American people want an answer. The American people want to feel safe. If Joe Biden can go out and say, hey, look, there are a lot of Republicans out there running on this Recovery Act that they voted against, I don't know why Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren and all of the leadership aren't running around the country and saying the Republican Party wants you to die. They didn't want you to get money for COVID, and they want your whole government to be decapitated. That should be the answer out of Chuck Schumer's mouth every single minute of every single day, as opposed to some variation of Susan Collins of, I'm concerned that the party who's been acting the same way for the last 35 years continues to act that way.
This is a party of sedition, violence, white nationalism, and what we're hearing from even the president is, we're going to work with them. Really? Because they literally were going to allow the government to be decapitated even if they themselves were going to be killed and Mike Pence to be hung. That's what y'all should be talking about. I don't get it. Jason and Susan.
They don't want to work with him. I mean,
they don't. They won't. And the message they want to pivot to is that Biden is a communist and that all of his policies are communist. That's what he wants to do. Anyway, Jason and Susan are staying right with me. It's a hostage situation. Up next on the readout, Margie Q. Green pushes back against her party's nominal House leader, Puppet Kevin, because she knows that she speaks for the base of the Republican Party and he does not.